Radio Retro Future.
Hello everyone, this is Bonzo the Radio Retro Future, trying something new today. I did not really have the time to make a fully scripted video. However, I do want to give particular workshops that I want to share with you all on REAM. So these would be videos that I will not post on my public channel because there's just not that much interest. They're going to be very detailed and it's just not very entertaining material. These are going to be purely educational videos on writing, and in particular on writing for the Association of Ishtar project, as we are finally starting to kind of get a feel of how we can coordinate these joint world building exercises. As a matter of fact, we're working on a video right now, and yeah, it's going great. We're getting like some awesome world design results. And I want to keep that going, and we also now have people who want to like share ideas. However, I have a particular way I want to see that without getting these exercises become like mere navel-gazing exercises, as is often the problem, is that you should be writing stories and then not navel-gaze. And today, for that purpose, I want to talk to you about how to use... And so today I want to talk to you about using journal entries as a narrative device. Before I get started, like I said, I'm gonna be posting this stuff on REAM. So if you're interested in these types of workshops, which I also want to organize in person, by the way, again, for that, join us on Discord. You go to reamstories.com/bunch and public, become a follower there. You will receive the links to more videos like this where I go into the nitty-gritty of writing. Probably not for everyone, but still, let's see how it goes. So YouTube does not punish me for making poorly performing videos. Anyway, let's get going. So what I want to start about is the difference between show, don't tell. In particular, I want to talk to you about the narrator's voice. Like in these examples, you have sentences in a kingdom far, far away, right? In a narrator's voice, it can be used effectively, it can be used wrongly. In my stories, I try to have a very weak narrator's voice. I really try to give the perspective of a character on the world without my own voice getting in the way of that. So I try to use it very sparingly. In this case, we have the example of a kingdom far, far away. Like, that is the narrator, that is the author telling you, well, this is the mindset I want you to be in. Like, it was a dark and stormy night. You know, that statement, there is no character being mentioned here. It's just a statement about, like, this is the mindset I want you to be in. Another one, there's a house standing in the field. That's another example of something that only an author could write. That's not a statement by a character. There's no mention of a character doing anything in this scene. And that's something I want to talk to you about in another video, which is about writing sentences and why this type of framing is not very good. And here you've got another one, you know, people who love to give exposition. All exposition is narrator's voice. For example, the Star Colonel's job was to manage the regiments. You know, this is not a statement made by a character. This is again the narrator informing the reader, but it does not move the story forward. But that's for another video. So we have types of storytellers, and the all-knowing storyteller, which is the narrator's voice, knows what's happening everywhere at all time. So this is, you know, again, a kingdom far, far away is an example of the knowing storyteller. And again, this is, you know, the guy that spouts loads of exposition. It will tell you like the entire functioning of an empire, like the reasons why banquets are organized the way they are. It does not move the story forward. That's why a lot of people do not like all-knowing storytellers. Then we have the first-person storyteller, which is a character retelling an event from the first-hand experience, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. And here, it is a character talking to you. Of course, the character is a stand-in for the author, but from a metaphysical point of view, it's the character in the story telling you about his experiences. And this is also where you can have the whole dilemma about the untrustworthy narrator, but that can only be the case in a first-person situation. If you have an all-knowing narrator, whatever that all-knowing narrator tells you, that is the lore. That is what happened. You know, if you cannot even trust the all-knowing narrator, I mean, That's why this whole discussion about certain franchises, like, oh, all these stories are told by untrustworthy narrators. No, that can only be the case in a first-person situation. Then we have the third-person situation. Now, this is the most common and the most effective, in my personal opinion. You're looking over the character's shoulder. Like, yeah, you have an element of the all-knowing storyteller there, but he's describing what other people are seeing. And this is the storytelling thing I use for my novels, right? So my novels are not written in the first person. Now, then you also have like the literal stand-in where kind of the third and first person get kind of intertwined. And also by writing it in present tense. I really hate it. It really becomes voyeuristic because you are like, I'm doing this now, I'm doing that now, like this is what I'm thinking at this very moment, and it becomes very voyeuristic. I don't understand why people enjoy that type of stuff, but I guess there's a market for it. But I also know there are magazines who reject such stories outright, and I fully comprehend why. So, continuing the types of storytellers, the all-knowing storyteller, as I already said, will provide a very strong exposition. It also explains the ranks of everybody in the mess hall to the readers. I based this on a book that I was actually listening to where this happens. So a character enters a mess hall, and then every rank in that space field is getting explained. You know, and then just the whole stories just comes a complete standstill. And like I say in this example, like I'm sure it's interesting to some, but as I also already said, it will completely grind to a halt because nothing is happening. The story isn't advancing, and you completely, you're just like, the story just freezes, and you're like, well, what were the characters doing again at this moment? Now, the narrator, so we're still talking about an all-knowing narrator, can comment on events. Characters like Terry Gilliam does this. I don't like it. Good Omens, there's often this very cringy commentary on, people used to think like, witches were doing things naked, haha, isn't that funny? And anyway, maybe it's just a bad narrator. Maybe you're just funny if you're there. Who knows? Prose can provide context and comedic effect. For example, Discworld does this a lot, giving commentary on the relationship between men and gods, but he does it very well. It's actually funny. And it's actually like, that's actually very smart. So he actually does something with it. He actually presents philosophical ideas in that book, right? And it actually plays a very important role in the upcoming scene, because it kind of like explains the logic of the events that are about to come. That's the difference, but that's a whole different topic. I just want to explain the fine details of the all-knowing narrator, right? So here you have like Stephen was the best gun slinger, had been a member of the Delta Marine Power Trooper Force, a unit that elite that he was its only member. Women wanted him and men wanted to be like him. This is one of those Steven Seagal often has like scenes like this where a random character is like explaining how awesome Steven Seagal's character is. So that's really kind of like a stand-in of that all-knowing storyteller, be it in a movie form. But this you see this a lot, where the author wants you to be so convinced that this character is absolutely amazing that he often starts with stunts like that, like how amazing and powerful and blah 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 that character is. But now we're kind of like moving back to the first-person perspective, which is what journals do as a narrative device, and which brings us to the question: why would you use journals as a story choice? Well, for me, it's immersion, because journals and documents are literally part of a setting. Thus, the reader is literally holding part of your world when they're reading a part of your world. This is why my anthologies, supposed to be documents from that world, are designed in a way that it actually looks like yellowish paper, so they really get the idea that they're actually holding a dossier rather than a novel. There are also reasons why you should not use journals as a narrative device, and some of these are that they're not supposed to be for exposition. I know this is why many people use them. In a way, you could argue that it's still more immersive than using the typical all-knowing narrator structure, but it's still the all-knowing narrator structure. It's still just exposition, and really it becomes like something, this I can skip because it's not relevant, there's nothing happening that's relevant to the story. Automatic skip for most readers anyway. And of course, do not apply the tell structure to your documents. I'll show you a bit more about that later. But yeah, don't do it. Don't use these things for exposition. Don't confuse knowing with the all-knowing narrator. Yes, and also never break immersion. And what I mean by that is where characters will write things in the journal that are clearly there to wave away something that will happen in the story. But you'll clearly have a line in there that's to wave away a fact or to explain why something is some plot contrivance, some excuse. So don't do it. Just don't do it. There we go. Tell. Efficient way. So tell. Well, what's the benefit of a tell structure? Why would you do that? Now, an example of a tell structure, for those who don't know, would like how you usually converse with people. Let's say you come to work. You notice that your friend Brad isn't there, and you ask a guy named Jim, "Hey Jim, why isn't Brad at work?" And then the guy will tell you, "Yeah, he's sick." That's an example of tell. It's simple, quick information, an efficient way to convey information and speed up events. There is a place and a time for it, especially if just say, well, the guy isn't there. You often have characters tell each other that, because then there is progression, because characters are actually performing actions. Again, I'll do this in another video. But the thing is with tell, it's often abstract, it's often generalizing, often vague. Like, the guy told you the guy is sick. Well, what does sick mean? Like, does he have a migraine? Does he have the flu? Does he have a cold? So that's what I mean by abstract and generalizing. Like, for example, dirty road is another example. What is a dirty road? Like, is it a literal dirt road? Hasn't it been cleaned? Is it just in a state of disrepair? A big city? Well, okay, well, how big is a city? Like, is it Rotterdam big or is it New York big? New York is the size of my country, so... Just, it doesn't tell you anything about the actual size of a city. Like, is it a city of 1 million people or a city of 1 billion people? And of course, again, exposition. It's very dangerous. It's very tempting to write exposition. And it's just not very engaging. So, okay, well, how does show work? Well, we just use the guy being sick. Well, how sick is he? Well, you can describe how the guy is laying on bed. His head is pounding. He feels his heart racing. Every time he's trying to get up, he starts to feel nauseous. That is show, where you go into the nitty-gritty stuff of, not saying somebody is sick, but actually going into the experience of what it's like to be as sick as he is. And, so you convey an experience like thoughts and emotions, that are relatable to the reader. It's also relatability, immersion. It takes a lot of work and words, because, you actually have to be in the shoes of that guy and say, hey, okay, I'm really sick, guys. Like, oh God, I've got this splitting headache. If I try to sit up, I get nauseous and I have to run to the bathroom. And, oh God, and I need to drink water all the time. And I just can't stop being thirsty. That leaves us to the journals themselves. Now, already said, the goal here is again to create immersion. So, you cannot do the tell structures in journals. You have to use the show structures. This is very important because, and I see this so much with people who have very little experience with journals, even experienced writers. They use journals as a dumping ground of exposition. They use tell structures instead of show structures, But the point is, the reason why it creates immersion is that you are fooling your audience that they're reading a journal while you're actually writing a first-person narrative. But because it's a document, you also need to give context. You need to frame the thing. And that means that at the start of a document, you need to clarify who wrote it. Why did the person write it? Who is the intended audience? And what impression does the author want to impress on that intended audience, right? I mean, you can have a professor writing something and he'll write it very dry. Of course, you're gonna have to fool the reader in that regard. It's gonna be a bit of a challenge, but you can do it. And you can have like a guy who's an absolute showman who wants to like make himself seem like he's the genuine Indiana Jones. So he'll try to entertain, dazzle his audience with his exploits. So that's kind of like the difference there. What's next? So here I have an example. This is from one of the books, from one of the anthologies. Here you have the date. So we immediately know, okay, this was written in the 19th century. So, and, you know, to all this concern, so you immediately know, okay, so this is going to be a letter. And here is the motivation, like the chair of the Association of Ishtar intends to address the question and concerns raised by various parties regarding P12. Okay. Well, what's P12? Why is everyone so concerned about it? See, so you're kind of like raising questions for the audience. Like, what is this about? And the only way for them to figure out what P12 is to keep on reading. Okay, and we're going to summarize it in our 4 points. Well, is it preternatural in nature? The answer is yes. Blend all these points. And then it kind of like ends up with, well, this is what happens. And, well, and here's an example of what happened. And then we're going to go into something that is written in the show format, which is the story of the seismic coastal battery that got destroyed in 1869. So, you know, this document sends you on a breadcrumb trail. And that's something you often see in things like Fallout and RPGs like that who use documents, is they send you on a breadcrumb trail. They will say, hey, regarding my message from yesterday, have you made a decision? Okay, well, what is the decision then? Well, the only way to figure that out is to find that one document of the other day. There you go. So you've got a quest now as a reader. This is also a thing. You know, you kind of like gamify your story. Very important. Think about it. Gamify it. You know, in order to complete the puzzle, complete the game, they need to keep on reading. That's the only way for them to finish the game. Right? And here we have another format. Here we have an example of a interview, or rather somebody trying to have an interview, because if I recall correctly, this character is drunk. So yeah, we've got an introduction, we've got an attachment, so it's part of a larger file, right? We even have a file number here, P15.13. Okay, what does that mean? Well, again, only way to figure that out is to go and read it. Gamify it. It's clear, okay, this is an audio log, so the guy's recording. This is also one of the reasons why radios are so prominent in the Association of Ishtar setting, because that was the only way to create this format. This is also, you know, this is how you do world building, people. You come across a problem like, how can we make that happen? Well, one of the benefits of alternate history is you can make up stuff. And yeah, that became like the foundation. Doing these types of interviews in my story became the foundation of the world building of the Association of Ishtar. And then we have like the designation of the associate. We've got a guy named Blighty. Yeah. And then another voice starts to interrupt because he's like in a tavern. Yada, yada, yada. So you can play a lot with these things. That's one of the things of the fun things about writing high concept. But again, for another video, again, become a follower on REAM. So, but yeah, there is a mystery. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Like, how was the investigation being conducted? So there's also a procedural element to all this. Like, how was this journal written? Like, that's one of the things that I often have in a lot of written documents that you find in games, where the guy is writing his journal while he's in mortal danger. That's very common. Like, how, like, really? He was sitting at the table while monsters are pounding on the door? Like, really? I mean, I can kind of understand that thing, but, you know, you'd think these characters have different priorities, right? But, you know, that's a trope thing, and a matter of execution, so... And yeah, but yeah, you also have to be clear, like, what is the dilemma? Why is the association investigating? Which measures do they take or recommend? What do they believe of the witness? Is the witness reliable? I think that is supposed to say. Oops. What impression do you want to leave on the reader? Like, what is gonna engross the reader? And also think about, I talked in previous videos about the universal fantasy, so that also needs to come back in these files. Yes, even if they're just 250 words, which is how I usually experiment with stories before I start writing my files. Write a flash fiction of 250 words, of which, again, on my REAM page, I have a lot of examples of that. So, now this is an interesting one. This is Dagon by Robert E. Howard. Or sorry, no, this is Lovecraft. Excuse me, not Robert E. Howard. Yeah, no, this is the start of Dagon, and look what he does. Like, kind of, Lovecraft does a bit of a sleight of hand here, where I'm writing this under appreciable strain, since by tonight I shall be no more, penniless and at the end of my supply of drug, which alone makes life endurable. I can bear the torture no longer. So this guy, kind of what Lovecraft does here, because this is going to go into a written journal. But what Lovecraft does here, before he gets into the journal segment, he kind of like puts you in a mindset that you are in the room with this man. And he's reading out what he is writing on the spot. You know, he's just such an elegant writer, he can do that, you see. So, yeah, but that is kind of like, does a sleight of hand, where Lovecraft starts with you, like, making you look across this guy's shoulder as he's writing all of this stuff down. Then he takes you into the journal segment of the story, kind of flawlessly have that transition. And then, again, at the end, for some reason, this guy decides to, describe in detail how he's going to self-terminate. So that's Dagon. Now, I want to also go to another story by Robert E. Howard, The Black Stone. That's why I got confused. I read it first in a strange book of von Juns, the German eccentric who lived so curiously and died in such a grisly and mysterious fashion. So yes, this is a guy writing a scientific essay, and he cites his sources. Like, the beginning of the story is a lot of citing sources, but also the story behind those sources. Like, really explaining, like, there are forces at work here, guys. Like, is it the cult, like, causing all these incidents? Publishers like Golden Goblin Press in 1909. Really? In 1909 there was a guy called Golden Goblin Press? Very interesting. I wonder if that's a reference to something. But yeah, so this is a very scientifically written story. Or at least, of course, it fools you in being that. But again, like in Dagon, it's written by a guy who's insane. And in The Black Stone, it's a guy who's very scientific, and who tells you about the experiences of his investigation into these dark topics. Then we have, this is an example from Fallout's Honest Hearts. And these are computer entries that you can find. I think the guy is called the Soul Survivor. I forgot. But a very interesting thing, because in all the entries, they're very short. This guy is a military guy, so he really looks at everything from a tactical point of view. Like, there are more of 100 of these. He has, like, you can recognize them because they wear black suits or blue suits with the number 22 on the back. Like, who are these people? So he's also a bit of talking to himself in these segments. Explains, like, how heavily armed there are, how many men there are, you know, who their leader is. So he really explains everything from a very military point of view. And he also kind of, like, predicts what he wants to do. He wants to get the women and children out. And, again, he's talking to himself because he's lonely. So there's like two things going on here. At one point you've got like a soldier trying to appraise everything tactically, like, where do I get my supplies? I need to secure these positions. I need to, like, have all these hangouts and stuff. And there's also the parts of him where he's talking to himself, like, I need to do all this. And then it ends with this, you know. Again, he's like planning. Like, again, he sees it. He investigates his opponents, you know. Then he says, well, I'm going to save these people by tomorrow. And then the final entry, they ate them. That's it. So you really see there is a progression, a very dark story of a man, you know, who's just going through this post-apocalypse. And, you know, clearly just that one line, they ate them. Like, what is going through this man's mind right now, right? Alright, and with that, I want to end this presentation. Again, go follow me on REAM Stories. If you enjoy this stuff, if you find this helpful, I want to post these more in the future on REAM Stories to all my followers for free. Of course, you're going to have to be a follower on there. And yeah, we are also preparing another Kickstarter for RPG Nightwatch. But yeah, we are working on new stuff every time. And that Kickstarter address does not change. So if you want to know what our next project on Kickstarter is going to be, bookmark that page and you'll know whenever we're working on something. And with that, folks, I'm going to bid you adieu. And as always, make things your way.